That was, of course, the Peanut song. I think the song name is Linus and Lucy, by Frank something or other, Guardino, I'm not sure, Trio. It's a famous album. Of course, it's famous because of the Peanuts comic strip. That was the first song I learned how to play with two hands back in, I don't know, 1986 or something, when I had my Commodore 64. A great program called the SID Play, I believe it was called, had a whole pile of SID tunes. That was one of them. And it showed you an upper and lower manual of the keyboards and the bass notes and the treble notes, so to speak. So anyway, I really can't play it any better today than I could when I was 20. But that's a quick introduction. I would start there because this Oberheim in the prior video, number 2 in this series of 3, I mentioned that the Oberheim cannot play a piano, doesn't have a piano patch. For all of its strong suits, all of its merits, it cannot play a reasonable piano. It can play an electric piano, kind of, sort of. What you just heard was, of course, a General MIDI piano. So I'm not playing with this with the volume up. I'm playing with this through a Roland JV2080 synthesizer, which I'll put on the screen here. And that has General MIDI. So it has the famous branding of the General MIDI, MIDI.org. I don't know, I guess it's a trademark. But it's a symbol that says, yes, this synth is General MIDI certified or compliant. And what does that mean? Well, it means a bunch of things. So in this video, in probably about 20 minutes or so, we're going to cover the basics of General MIDI. I'm going to play some sample sounds for you. I'm going to look at the spec sheet. I'll give you links to the official MIDI.org documentation. You may need to register there in order to get access to it. It's free. There's no ads. There's no junk mail. It's a very good site to be a part of. And then we'll jump back into the Wall of Doom room in my computer room and watch 3 videos, or rather have 3 songs play from the Lotharek Jill Sammer device we featured in the first video. But I'll have on screen a Apple GarageBand kind of live play of the same track. It'll be playing through the Atari, excuse me, but I'll have the visuals of the GarageBand playing the same piece with the same tempo synced to the audio, and I'll be zooming in and out. There'll be no talking in that portion of this video. So again, this is part 3 of 3. I'm going to jump straight into General MIDI. We'll jump into the room to just close with some Sam 2695 tunes. That'll be it for the series. I do have more coming, by the way, related to this, but we'll talk about that at the end. So here we are back at the Oberheim. As I mentioned, this is not playing Oberheim synth sounds. It's merely a General MIDI controller at this point, or a MIDI controller at this point, connected to my JV2080, which is off to my left, but you have it on your screen there and you can see what it looks like. I need to do a few things here, and the first thing is to continue the prior discussion from the second video. We talked about patches and switching patches, and I talked about the different kind of banks in this particular Oberheim. Forget about all that. The thing to know is that there are 16 groups of 8 banks, 8 patches in the General MIDI specification, otherwise known as 128 voices. On my left, I have a series of papers here. I'll superimpose what they look like on the screen so it's a little more readable. But the important thing to point out here is these are the General MIDI sound generator requirements. And there's really maybe 3 of them. There's a bunch of things listed here, some bullets. But the important aspect of this is that, well, what is it going to sound like? Is it going to be an FM synthesis? Is it going to be subtractive analog synthesis? Is it going to be wavetable synthesis? They don't care. MIDI just says, MIDI.org just simply says, it's up to the manufacturer. So that's number 1. Number 2, it needs to have a minimum of, be able to play 24 dynamically allocated voices available simultaneously for both melody, or melodic as they call it, and percussive sounds, or 16 dynamically allocated voices and 8 for percussion. So that's a pretty tall order, especially back in the, I guess, 20, 30 years ago when this original standard was released. This Oberheim, by the way, for all of its strong suits, several $1,000s, it would not be General MIDI compliant, even if it had the sounds that match the sounds it required, because it can only play 8 sounds simultaneously. It only has 8 voices. We need 24 voices to be General MIDI compliant. And the third part that's important, and there are some more things here, but the third really important part is that it complies with the 128 patches that the General MIDI specification lays out, such that a wedding singer, a subway performer, somebody who does some tracking ahead of time can walk up and plug their MIDI cable into any General MIDI device from a sequencer where they have recorded music, and it'll play it pretty much as they expect it to play. And this holds true, of course, for all the video games that were produced using General MIDI spec, including the early games that had wavetable cards that plugged into sound blasters to improve the sound generation that came out of these blasters with these wave blaster so-called cards, many of which had the Dream chip, although there are other cards as well. In the description below, I'm including a YouTube video of a person that, I forget the name, but they profiled 3 General MIDI sound card add-ons, the Dream chip being one of them. So have a look at that as well. So let's jump into this. My first page is gone. This is the requirements. I didn't mention it, but there's also, aside from the 128 patches or voices of instruments that we, kind of all know and have heard in orchestral settings, in jazz settings, in high school band settings, and then some synth settings. There's also a second kind of a major feature of General MIDI, which is the percussion. And there's a sequence of, 30 or 40 something instruments that are percussive and also need to be very specifically defined based on note value. We'll get to that in just about 3 minutes. So let me cast this one sheet aside, and we're on to the level 1 sound set, as they call it. And this is, again, General MIDI we're talking about here. Everything I covered in the prior video, which was the second of this 3-part series, which was MIDI. I was talking about note on, note off, channel pressure, MIDI start and stop clock, things like that. Program change, of course. That all applies here. But this, now we're layering another set on top of this, another set of kind of MIDI specification, which is the General MIDI level 1. So here we have the patches, 128. I'll superimpose this on the screen. There are 16 groups of 8 instruments per. So the math is 16 times 8 is 128. We have 128 instruments numbered from 1 to 128. Of course, in MIDI and in binary, in computers, things start at 0 and go to 127. So that's what, from a protocol perspective, that's what we're talking. But from a usability perspective, you'll see on your synthesizer patch number 1, patch number 8, patch number 11, etc. So we're talking about numbers that start with 1. So getting right to the beginning, what you heard just now, that piano I played, mediocre performance, I guess, was piano number 2, otherwise known as the bright acoustic piano. And it sounds like this. By the way, the acoustic grand piano, number 1, sounds like this. Similar. And then it goes on. There's a honky-tonk piano, which don't know why you would want it. Electric pianos, various electric harpsichord, and a clav. That's a clavinet. That's the first group of 16 groups, and that's the piano group. I'm just going to poke around at a couple of sounds here and there. I'd like to state, for those that are not aware, that competition among synth makers was and still is probably fierce. It was fierce, it probably still is fierce. Who can make the best this sound? I should say that the JV2080, the synth I'm playing through, was released around, 2000, 2001, I believe, or maybe end of life in 2001. I don't know what it cost, maybe close to $1,000 at the time. But General MIDI was something it did, but it had a large array of sounds. And it was largely known as being a rompler. There wasn't a sound design engine where you can create your own sounds. Instead, it had a bunch of sampled sounds, a bunch of waveforms. Some of them may have been like pulse code modulation based, certainly wavetable based. And there are cards you can buy, expansion cards. In fact, I have one right here, just to show you what these things look like, the size of it. This is something that I have. I never even installed it, to be honest. But this is, I think, the Tech, what do they call it? Oh, Techno. There's a Techno expansion board. And you can unlock and plug this thing in and lock it down. You can have, I think, 2 or 3 of these in this JB2080. I never bothered with it. But, that was what they were doing back then. These are romplers. It plays kind of, it's not a sampler, but it plays ROMs. So it was common. My point is, it was common for synth manufacturers like Roland to take a really good piano sound and say, you know what? Let's put that into slot number 1. We can do this sound. We can do a clarinet, put that in slot 72. And they didn't have to really make a bunch of new sounds for this thing. They already had hundreds of sounds in their repertoire, and they would take those and place those into the General MIDI slots. Maybe come up with a few sounds along the way. So let me run through some different banks. I'm going to pass over a lot of these. I'm going to go straight to the organ bank, which is bank number 3, which I think is 18. It's something called percussive organ. Let's go to 3-2. And this is a, let's see, it's, yeah. Hear that? That little tap, little thump at the beginning of the sound is part of the Hammond sound. So there's percussion toggle on a Hammond B3 and M3 organ, and that's what that sounds like. Versus a normal, what they call the other one, it's called a rock organ. Oh, sorry. This is the first one is called a drawer bar organ. Versus, so there's a bit of a difference there. There's a bunch of organs. And as I demonstrated on the Blofeld, channel aftertouch comes into play. So if I play a chord here on this, what am I hitting? I think I'm playing like a church organ. Yeah, church organ 20. When I press hard, you hear that tremolo kick up or a vibrato, usually from a Leslie, an external Leslie speaker. So let's move across. I'll move to the, I guess, the bass instruments next. So that's 32, which will bring me to 5, 1. Pretty convincing. Some of these are not convincing. For instance, the electric pick, electric bass finger style pick. I have arpeggiator on here. Not very good. The fretless bass. I'm not a big fan of that. The slap bass, this will be somewhat ridiculous because this is not a slap. Then it goes on. It goes into cellos, violins. Let me get up to this next group. That's a violin, believe it or not, but played in a proper register. Maybe even Gadget would disagree, but that's a violin. Viola, cello, probably a bit lower. Contrabass, this is a good one. Tension building, etc. So anyway, huge raft of sounds here. I won't play too many more of these. I'm going to jump right ahead to instrument number 97, which they call FX 1 through 8. So 97, we're talking about, I guess that's going to be, let me see with the quick math here, 12. I think that's number 12. It'll be 13 then. 13, 1. Yeah. That's called Soundtrack. 99 is Crystal. 100 is Atmosphere. Brightness, Here Comes Goblins. Echoes. And finally, Sci-Fi. So, you know, take it or leave it, but these are the FX sounds. And of course, any synth manufacturer can make something called Goblins and make it sound any way they like. Whether or not it's accurate or better than another, who's to say? The next bank, which is bank group 14 on my synth here, but number 105 is what they call the ethnic group. This is a sitar, banjo, etc. Now I'm going to jump quickly to some of the percussive sounds, which is not percussion, and that is, I believe, I don't know what that is. A go-go, okay. A gago, I don't know how to pronounce it. Steel drum. Don't know how to play a steel drum. Woodblock. And again, some of these are sampled and the waves are taken at a certain register, which was appropriate for the instrument, but played in an upper register. I don't know what that is. A rim shot, down low. I don't even know where the woodblock is supposed to be played. They're all pretty lousy as far as I'm concerned. And then finally, I'll jump to the reverse cymbal, which I think is the top of this range. Yeah, all right. Fair enough. And then we get to what they call the sound effect bank, which are 121 to 128. So I'll go to group 16, patch 1, turn off my arpeggiator because that's set because of the Oberheim patch. And this is guitar fret noise. Utterly useless. Breath noise. Seashore. I don't know. Bird tweet. Dreadful. Telephone ring. The helicopter. That's a little bit better. A nice deep rumble there. Applause. I think this one was stupid. Yep, that's terrible. And then lastly, gunshot. Of course. I have the arpeggiator on. Again, low register, and then of course the highest register. So there you have it. That's a quick run through of some of the General MIDI patches of this synth. A quick discussion on the groups. There's a couple call outs here. The fact that manufacturers could do largely what they wanted, provided they met these minimum requirements. Before I break on this part of the video and then jump into the 3 tracks that I promised you with no talking, I'm going to quickly switch to the percussive sheet, which is otherwise known as General MIDI Percussion Map, Channel 10. Now, this is different from the 1 to 128 patch in that all of these sounds are in the same program, and they are program 10 on channel 10. So to do this, I need to go to my device, and I'm going to move to channel 10. I actually have to change my Oberheim here through my global command. Just pick my bank, my MIDI channel to 10. That's on 10 now, good. And then I'm going to change my my JB2080 to be on percussion. It says rhythm on the machine, but anyway, now let's go with this thing now. So we've got the acoustic bass drum, which is MIDI key 35, and we've got the side stick, acoustic snare, hand clap. It goes on and on. I should mention that the top of this range, from a requirement perspective, is number 81, which is open triangle, not to be confused with mute triangle, which I think are these two. If open, yeah. Okay, 76 is high wood block, 77 is low wood block, 78 is the muted, I don't know how to say it, C-U-I-C-H-A, and 79 is the open of that. 70 and 80 is the mute triangle. 81 is the open triangle. The rest of these percussive instruments are add-ons. So synth manufacturers can surely add more than what is required for the base General MIDI specification, and Roland apparently went on and did that. So let's hear what they are. Some of them may repeat, but maybe not. It's a shaker. Let me hear what the regular shaker is. Probably see. There's got the shaker here. Maracas, let's see. So, you can hear the variation there. Then we have whatever that is. That's interesting. A little complexity. So a couple more bass drums. That's a thud. That's a dead hit on a bass drum. You get the idea. This concludes the demonstration of General MIDI on this Roland JV 2080 synth. Now we'll jump into the Wall of Doom room, my computer room, and we're going to play 3 tracks through the Lotharek Jill Sammer, played by the Atari 800XL, captured directly as audio with no talking, and on the screen I'm going to have a GarageBand tracker running so you can kind of see that. And then we'll be wrapping up video number 3. And I hope you enjoyed the series. I have more coming up. For instance, I'll have a teaser at the very end of this that talks about my work to integrate a Jill Sammer, rather a Dream chip, right? The Dream 2695 chip into a Foenix computer, which I've already have running and I've demoed on the Foenix Discord. But I'm going to have kind of a deeper dive video coming soon where I show how I did it, what to wire to what part to buy if you want to do it by yourself. And this will work on any Junior or F256K keyboard version. So stay tuned for that. Thanks.